here we have a 2014 Holden Colorado. You're going to have this sort of shaped dash. This might be a bit different in here. You might not have a screen, and you might have different aircon controllers. You might have a big like circle here. But from 2012 to 2016, this is the install for the Vhedia head unit. So this might look a bit different depending on what version you have, and this might look a bit different depending on what version you have. And you may be using the CAN bus box because you have like a MyLink in it, or you might like not be. So that's just some things. You might have a factory reverse camera, or you might not. It's cool. Kit comes with one, so you get a reverse camera. So we're quickly going to cover what you get in the kit. Vhedia head unit kit for the Colorado. Antenna adapter cable. This will adapt the Facia to just like a standard antenna for FM. A GPS antenna, Wi-Fi antenna, trim removal tools, the OBD2 scan tool so you can get data from the engine ECU, USB adapter cable so you can keep the factory USB port working. This is for a brown plug that goes in the back of the head unit into the auxiliaries. This is if you're going to use some auxiliary sound in or video in. Most people won't use this. Your reverse camera setup. So if you have like the factory camera, it's going to be plugged into the cam in, or if you put in an aftermarket camera, it's going to be putting this cam in as well. These other wires here are not used, but you can use them to run a secondary camera. The third USB port, pink plug, purple plug, so that just plugs in the back of the auxiliaries on the head unit. White 10 pin plug, has 2 USBs on the back, and external microphone port. So you can run these, one of these will plug into here, keep the existing USB, and the other one you can like run somewhere handy, or if you're training a dash cam or 4G module, you can use it wherever. Pre-outs, most people are not going to use this. This is if you're running aftermarket. Now these adapter kits, you're going to have one or the other. If you have like a MyLink, you're going to have this big thing going on, the cam box. Then we have the head unit itself, so obviously fairly straightforward, has like the Facia and everything like built in, 9-inch screen. In the back here we got like a main 20 pin plug, our GPS auxiliary plugs, our Wi-Fi antenna, and the FM antenna. To start with, trim removal tools come in the kit, so just want to put them under at the bottom here and pop this up. The first bit that has to come off is your aircon down the bottom here, so you can normally get your hands in here and give this a good pull and it should pop out. You can see it's always good just to give it this sort of like a jerky action on both sides, and you'll see that it will like pop out, and then you can get your trim removal tool and just work it up the side and work it up the other side. These do feel quite tight on this one, so that's how it comes out. So the jerky action I'm talking about, so just going like that on both sort of sides, like wiggle it and it'll come loose. So like normally happens with these plastic ones. You can just leave that here for now. Again, it's a bit of a patient game, this like model, so just go around and just eventually it'll come off like that, and you just pull out the hazard switch from the back there, so that just comes unplugged out of there, that comes off like that. So that's the top and the bottom piece off. So again, that probably took, I spent probably like a minute and a half just going, I like pulling each corner to get it out. They're quite tight on these ones. Now the main unit here comes out, 1, 2, 1, 2, 2 screws on either side. Some of these, if it is a different like model one, like the other one with no screen, the screws can be down the bottom here. They're just like Phillips head screws, so try and pull them out if you can and not lose them. You can see it says MyLink at the start, and we turn this one on. So that's just showing us that it is like a MyLink version. So obviously radio, just having a look obviously what this head unit can do. It is touchscreen, radio settings, connection settings, vehicle settings. So you got a few changes you can make here, and the rest of it's pretty basic. You got like radio, you can do basic Bluetooth link, pictures in a movie from the USB port. That's about it. Once it's done, you can just flick your trim tool under the top of the aircon vents here and give them a little pull and a wiggle. Just do that, so when we are taking this unit out, we can move them back a little bit just to help us get the unit actually out of the here. And then we also just need to get to the bottom of these aircon flips here. Then you'll be able to get your finger under there and give it a good pull. Again, like all these plastic parts, it's a bit of a jerky motion will help you get it out. Those are just the clips you're trying to get past when you are doing that. Now the unit will come out a bit easier. Just past the old one, so you can actually take this other side off as well. So these are all the plugs we have on the back here. We're just going to unplug every single one. So that's all your screws, all your plugs taken out now. So like this one here, I push down this clip and pull this back to get it out, and when it goes back in it'll be the opposite. This one here, push down this clip here, and this one here, there's actually, you can turn the radio upside down, but there's just a push button on like the bottom of it here, which you push down to pull it out. So that's the trim tool, can be quite handy there, just like use a sharp end to push down and pull out. So you got 1, 2, 3 connections on the back of this like radio. So there's the old radio taken out there, plugs on the back and the front of it. First thing we do is we get our adapter kit for this model. Obviously it's got this big plug, so it's fairly obvious which one you're going to be using. Plug this in, it's only going to fit in the correct way it can fit in. That little cam thing there folds back up, so that's our ease adapter kit, like got it hooked up. And we've got like a USB and our FM antenna. This is our USB retention, fairly straightforward as well, clips together. And then the antenna here, again everything can only plug in the way it does because it has like locating pins. So that's our 3 things we need. Now we just want to, that extra plug you had at the back there, that was for your hazard up the top, if you're just wondering what that was for. So now we're trying to grab the unit and just like make sure everything like powers up and works fine. Got the head unit here. We're going to put this black 20 pin plug into the back of the unit side here. Give that a good push into it, makes a click noise, and just plug in the FM antenna. It's basically all we need. Now what we need is to turn the car on. Check that the head unit like powers up. We normally just check like a couple things here, like 1, that the radio works and we have sound coming through the like speakers, and 2, that we have the steering wheel control working. So you can see the CAN bus is working because it's like picking up the door was open. Oh, the wrong door, but I'll show you how to switch that in a second. Radio. So we have sound coming through. That's me using the steering wheel control buttons at the moment, so that's cool, that's working. Basically, we want to check that and that. Now, there's no reverse camera on this model, but if it did have, so this one has got a MyLink, so we are going to put we're going to put our aftermarket reverse camera in. So that's our next step. We're going to do the reverse camera now because we want to check that that's working before we put everything back away. Alright, I was just checking there. I just put the car. This is just like a manual, like 6-speed. So you can see if I put it in reverse, it's picking up the reverse signal from the CAN bus system. So if you have like a MyLink and you are using that like orange box with the big black connector, you will get this reverse signal coming from there. It just means you don't need to use a reverse trigger on the reverse camera. So also in the kit you'll get a reverse camera, 1080p colour camera. Looks like this. If you don't currently have like a reverse camera, it is like a multi-fit. So you can see there's a few like mounting holes and that can angle up and down. So it mounts like this, like this way up. And a couple of screws to mount it. It has 2 plugs here. It has like a yellow RCA and a powered DC plug. So it also comes with this 5-meter cable here, which should cover most cars. The end with the green wire is going to end up behind the head unit, and the other end here is at the back of the car. So you'll see a red and a black coming off that DC. This here just it needs to go to reverse wires, to the reverse like wire. So if you have a trailer plug, like this car does in this case, we're going to splice into those, or otherwise you can just splice straight into your reverse like wires. So for the reverse camera here, we're going to come off the reverse power on the trailer plug, coming off reverse power on your reverse lights there. As you can see, they're on. So you can just Google up the pin out if you forget it. So here it should be 3 and 2. So the one that's high and the one next to it should be our reverse one. So I always just check these like a multimeter, just make sure they are correct. If you've been using a trailer and you know they are, well then they will be fine. But just to double check over here. These 2 wires coming back here. We've actually gone to the reverse lights on here because they are fairly easy to get into. The reverse lights plug is right on the side here. This was a black and a green and white wire with reverse power. So we've just plugged into this, so we've just used a splitter here, and we'll completely cover this back in electrical tape, so that's going to be waterproof as well. You can use whatever connection type you want to splice into these cables. It's up to you. Did also notice while we're under here, we did find the factory reverse camera plug. I think it just has a video signal feed going onto this. So in the future we might see if we can hook into this, because that'll save us running the cable back to the cab. Power the car up, put it in reverse. You've got this grey 6-pin cable here with a purple cam in plug that plugs into the the yellow RCA you've just run from the reverse cam. This trigger wire on this model, we don't have to worry about it. If it was on a model that didn't have a MyLink, we would need to connect this green wire to the orange and black wire labelled reverse in coming out of the main harness. But on this model, because it had a MyLink link and it's hooked to the CAN system, goes into reverse when you put the car in reverse. But if it didn't do that on the other models, this here green cable, you just need to connect to the orange and black cable coming out of the main plug here called reverse in. Now obviously we're just like checking our screen, we got the reverse camera coming up and obviously the parking sensors, so that's all good. So that's the test of the reverse camera. So now this is just for the video for that reverse screen wire I was just talking about here. So if you don't have the CAN bus and you don't go into a reverse screen, automatically when your car goes into reverse, this is the reverse in wire here I was talking about. It's called reverse in. It's orange and black. That just connects to the green wire. So you just need to connect those two together. And that's going to give you a reverse trigger, which is going to put the screen into reverse mode when you go into reverse. The reverse yellow RCA here, we've just run along from the back underneath the chassis rail on top, which I'll show in a second. Then we've popped it up under a grommet under here, and then it's come up out here, and we've just run it up the side of the trim here. This pops out, and it's just hanging up here right now. And then we're just going to tuck it under the dash, and then we'll pop it out so it comes behind the head unit. So that's pretty easy. Just can like pop off this door trim. You just pull it off with your hands. This here just pulls off with your hands too. And if we get under here, you'll see the wire. You probably can't see too dark because it's coming out of the grommet. Alright, cool. So we've run the reverse camera. This was an aftermarket reverse camera. We put in this one, so that comes in the kit if your car doesn't have one. Otherwise you could just skip that bit just before this because it was just to do with running the aftermarket reverse camera. So now we're going to make sure we have our cables. Just a couple things that need to come off the old fascia here and go into the new one. One is these green clips. There's 1, 2, 3, 4 of them. When we pulled this one out, actually like one stayed in the car, so when we push the new frame in, it'll actually still clip in, so that's not too much of a problem. You just use a flathead screwdriver to pop these off, and then they just clip back on to the new frame. And then you've just got your hazard switch here, which push on either side, and that'll pop out the front of the frame. Just put it back in reverse into the new frame, just like that, and you can see that's in. All good. Those are the two things you need to take off the old like fascia, put on the new one. Alright, now we just need to go through and do all the wires. So we've done the USB retention wire. The other end of this we'll just plug into our white plug here, the two USBs on the microphone on it. You can plug into the one that says CarPlay and Android Auto. Plug that in. This one here you can like run down somewhere like handy. Yeah, so we normally run it down to like the kick panel there and just like tuck it behind it. So you can just like pull out the kick panel if you ever need it. Just means it's easy to get to. If you are using it for like a dash cam or something, then you can use that. You can use it for like the dash cam. So this one is just going to be tucked down here so we can get to it. So that's going to be our white one there. Then we've got our GPS. Obviously mounting this so it gets a good view of the sky without any steel in the way. So you can just put it back here up underneath the plastic here. You can stick it upside down. Of course that GPS just peeled off the stick there. We've left most of it covered up because we don't need it, and just go as far forward as you can get behind the top of the aircon vent here. So it's probably GPS is probably sitting about up there. So my hand went through into that side, which just allowed us to go a little bit further. The GPS is probably around about here instead of just putting it straight here. So again, just a bit further away. Wi-Fi, this one's going to screw into the back of the unit, just float loose, so we'll do that in a second. Our camera, so if you are going to use like a secondary camera, you'll be these ones here that say F-cam, but for now don't worry about them. Purple cam ins, what you need. If you had a factory reverse camera, you'd plug that into this cam in here, and that'll get the factory reverse camera working. We put an aftermarket one in here because it didn't have one, so we plug it into the one we ran from the back of the car. That's that, and then two more wires. One's our third USB, which we don't use. Not many people use this for the dash cam. We do sell like a dash cam that you can view on the screen and stuff, so that's fairly handy, isn't it? So you can run that for that, but for now you might as well plug it in, just leave it hanging around the back. And auxiliaries, not going to be used in this case, but you can use them to have like a second rear view of like a full-time camera and some sound coming through from that camera if the camera's got like a mic on it. So we'll grab the head unit now. Now we'll plug our plugs in. We'll do another check that everything's all good, so you don't have to come back and do different things. So plug the main power in. That sort of hangs around here. That's that, pretty much done. Don't worry about anything else in there. Antenna plug. That's coming through over this side. So you sort of take them to the sides from, pull them back through, makes it a bit tidy when you put it back together. So antenna plug over to here. That's our hazard plug again. Just keep it up the other way. An extra plug to confuse us. Our GPS, that goes onto the side above the main plug here. Just a little screw on one. Screw it up as tight as you can, hand tight. Our reverse camera purple one goes into the auxiliary. Bottom right hand side there. USB. We got our extra USB, the little purple one, plugs into the 4 at the top. These plugs can only go where they fit, so you can't go too wrong with them. Our brown auxiliary plug, which basically not going to use, but we'll just leave it in there so you know where it is. Like Wi-Fi antenna onto this one on this side, and that covers all our plugs plugged in. So we're just going to leave it floating here and just do a little test. Always just have a good look around, make sure you haven't got any plugs. Fairly easy to do. Again, power the car on. Basically what we're checking for is that the unit powers up. First time the unit boots up, not hard resets, so usually it will boot within a couple of seconds. Alright, so check you got your sound coming through.
At the end of my Bachelor's of Fine Art in 2016, but I was really interested in themes.
So sound, steering wheel controls, and if you go into reverse, your reverse camera's coming up. Beautiful. That's basically it. So now we're just going to let it all float and sit back in. And don't forget the hazard plug up the top. Because you want that working if you need it. Go for your wires back down, line it all up. So it had those 4 tabs if you remember, so just make sure those line up reasonably well. And just give it a few good pushes around. And that's it. It doesn't use the 4 like mounting screws that we took out of the top, as it's like lighter and it's fine how it is. So again, we just do our test once more. You can see it booted up a bit quicker that time. Make sure our steering wheel controls are working. We've got sound. Reverse camera's working. Happy days. So that's all good. Now we'll go and put our things back in reverse. So I just made a call then, using CarPlay on here, and it was like fine. So that's cool. So now you just want to put everything back in reverse the way you took it out. So it was all fairly straightforward. Obviously these here, and we'll put our aircon vents back in. Clicks in nicely, and then put the head unit in again. So that previous clip, we should have done it this way first. So aircon vents in before you put the head unit back in is the correct technique. So side air vents in first, make sure they'll push down, then head unit in, and then you can clip back in your bottom aircon. Like anything plastic, just make sure it all lines up, and then you should find it just all clips back in with a little push up at the bottom for your aircon. And just give it all a good push down the outsides, and then your new head unit in. Good job. Again, turn it on, do all your tests, make sure everything's still working, and good to go. So that's the reverse camera. Like once it's all done there, it's just sitting in between the trailer plug and the Anderson plug. It's fairly tight. You can see the tow ball too. Underneath you can just see we've run it back along, and it's connected into our tail lights over here, rear tail lights, and then it's the cable, the main RCA cable has been run along on top of this chassis rail, and then it's popped up under the grommet, under here, into that grommet, under the seat, and then behind it. So that's sort of the end of the install there for that. So you can see this is the unit all hooked up correctly now. You see we've got CarPlay coming through, so steering wheel controls working, wireless CarPlay. Here's our home screen, you got all your apps there coming in. You could see when I opened the door before, hooked to the CAN system, that's coming in. Obviously we're going to reverse. We've got our reverse camera coming up. Then here, when I showed you at the start, there was some of those extra settings. The car pulls in some basic information from the computer. No tyre pressure on this one, so that doesn't come in, but that's your basic information coming in there. And your control settings, this was all that stuff I was going through before. comfort and convenience, you would have remembered at the start. I went through all that stuff, so all that sort of stuff sort of still comes in like that. So there you got it. So that's your Holden Colorado head unit installed. 2012, 2016. This one had like a MyLink in it, so it's all good, and that's why it's connected into the CAN bus of the car with a few different settings. So you can see we also have our OBD2 scan tool hooked up in here, which gives you some data from the engine ECU. That just plugs in above in this little console down here. It's just plugged in behind here. Now I'll get a bit closer. So you can see the OBD scan tool is just plugged into there. That's where it sits, and that just it allows you to bring up some engine data on your screen and check and clear faults.